I've been driving buses for the Massachusetts Bay Transportation Authority for about 6 years now. Boston routes mostly. The 77 line, if you know the city, runs from Harvard Square out through Somerville and into the suburbs. It's a good route. Steady, predictable. Lots of college kids, lots of commuters, lots of old ladies going to the grocery store. I like it. I like the routine. Same stops, same faces, same traffic. It's boring, but boring is safe. The night everything changed was a Friday in March. I was working the late shift, the last run of the night. Usually I'd start at 10 p.m., do my route, and be back in the depot by 2 in the morning. But that night, dispatch sent me on a different run, a last-minute thing. Some driver had called in sick, and they needed someone to cover the 117 line out to the western suburbs. I didn't mind. Overtime pay, a chance to see some different roads. I figured it would be easy. I was wrong. So wrong. It started with a text. My personal phone buzzed while I was pulling out of the depot. I looked at the screen. The number was blocked, but the message was clear. Route 77 cancelled. Take the old county road. Avoid the highway. I frowned. I didn't recognize the number, but the message was specific. Route 77 was my regular route, and the old county road was a back way through the countryside. It wasn't on any of the official bus maps, but I knew it existed. I'd seen it on GPS a few times. A narrow, winding road that cut through the woods and came out near the town of Westford. It was faster than the highway, but only locals used it. I figured it was dispatch trying to save time. Maybe there was an accident on the highway, maybe construction. I didn't think much of it. I just turned left at the next intersection instead of right and headed for the old county road. That's when things started to get weird. The road was dark, no streetlights, no reflectors, just 2 lanes of cracked asphalt winding through dense forest. The trees were old, tall pines and maples that leaned over the road like they were trying to block out the sky. The bus's headlights barely cut through the darkness. I had my high beams on, but it felt like I was driving into a tunnel. I checked my GPS. The road was on the map, but the name was faded. It just said, Old County Road, unmaintained. No speed limit, no mile markers. Just a thin blue line on a gray screen. I drove for about 10 minutes. No houses, no cars, no signs of life. Just trees and darkness and the hum of the diesel engine. I was starting to get a bad feeling, the kind of feeling you get when you're alone in a place you shouldn't be. Then I saw it. Up ahead, through the trees, I could see a building. A large building, old, Gothic, brick and stone, with a slate roof and tall, narrow windows. It looked like a castle, or a prison, or both. I slowed down as I approached. There was a gate across the road, but it was open. Rusted, half hanging off its hinges, but open. And on the gate, barely visible in the dim light, was a sign. Westford State Asylum for the Insane, closed 1982, no trespassing, violators will be prosecuted. I felt my blood run cold. An asylum, an abandoned asylum, in the middle of nowhere. Why would the bus take me here? I looked at my GPS. The road I was on dead-ended at the asylum. There was no way through, no way around. I was going to have to turn around. But before I could, the bus's doors opened. On their own. The hydraulic hiss of the doors sliding open echoed through the silent night. I stared at the open doors, my heart pounding. I hadn't touched the controls. The doors just opened, like something was inviting me in. That's when I saw her. A woman was standing at the front of the bus, right at the bottom step. She was wearing a white uniform, an old-fashioned nurse's uniform, starched white dress, white stockings, white shoes. Her hair was pulled back in a tight bun. She looked like she'd stepped out of a 1950s black and white movie. She said, "You're early for your shift." I just stared at her. My mouth was open, but no words came out. She walked up the steps and sat down in the seat directly behind me, the first row of passenger seats. She folded her hands in her lap and stared straight ahead. She didn't say anything else, just sat there, waiting. I finally found my voice. "Mom, I'm not supposed to be here. I'm a bus driver. I got a text from dispatch to take this route. I think there's been a mistake." She didn't look at me. She just said, "There are no mistakes, only arrivals." I felt a chill run down my spine. I glanced at the clock on the dashboard. 3:33 a.m. That was impossible. I'd left the depot at 10 p.m. It should have been maybe midnight at the latest, but the clock said 3:33. I looked at my phone. Same thing. 3:33. I checked the GPS. 3:33. Everything said 3:33. I looked back at the nurse. She was still staring straight ahead. I said, "Mom, I'm going to turn the bus around and take you back to town. You can't stay here. This place is abandoned." She said, "This place is never abandoned. It's always here. It's always waiting." I was about to argue when I heard something. A sound from the back of the bus, a soft thump, like someone dropping a book. I turned around. The back of the bus was empty, just rows of dark seats. But I could have sworn I saw movement, a shadow. Just for a second, I said, "Is there someone else on the bus?" The nurse said, "There are always others. They just don't show themselves to everyone." I didn't like that. I didn't like any of it. I reached for the door controls to close the doors and get out of there. But the controls were dead. The button didn't work. I tried the ignition. Nothing. The engine was still running, but I couldn't move the bus. It was stuck, parked, frozen in place. I looked out the window. The asylum was right there. The front doors were open, wide open, like a mouth waiting to swallow me. I could see inside, a lobby, old furniture, a reception desk, a single light flickering at the far end of a hallway. The nurse stood up. She walked to the front of the bus and stopped at the door. She turned and looked at me. Her face was pale, too pale. Her eyes were dark, too dark. She said, "Your shift has started. They're waiting for you inside." I said, "Who? Who's waiting?" She smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. It was the smile of someone who knew something I didn't. She said, "The ones who were never discharged, the ones who never left. They've been waiting for a new driver for a long time." She stepped off the bus and walked toward the asylum. Her white uniform glowed in the darkness. She didn't look back. She just walked through the open doors and disappeared into the flickering light. I sat there for a long time, shaking, staring at the asylum. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't move the bus. I couldn't call anyone. My phone had no signal. The radio was nothing but static. I was stuck, alone, in front of an abandoned asylum with a nurse who had just vanished into thin air. I did the only thing I could think of. I got out of the bus. I walked to the back of the bus and started checking the tires, the engine, anything that might explain why I couldn't move. I found nothing. Everything looked normal, except for one thing. The back of the bus was covered in a fine layer of dust, like it had been sitting in that spot for years. I ran my finger along the bumper. The dust was thick, and underneath the dust, I saw something. A date, scratched into the metal. 1982. I felt like I was going to be sick. I walked back to the driver's seat and tried the ignition again. This time, the engine sputtered and died. The lights went out. The dashboard went dark. The only light was the flickering glow from the asylum's front door. That's when I saw the figures, standing in the doorway. Silhouettes, dozens of them, tall and short, thin and fat, all standing perfectly still, watching me. Their faces were hidden in the shadows, but I could feel them staring. I could feel their eyes on me. One of them stepped forward, a man in an old-fashioned suit. He walked toward the bus, slowly, deliberately. When he reached the front of the bus, he stopped. He pressed his hand against the windshield. His fingers were long, too long. His nails were yellow. And he smiled, a wide, toothy smile that stretched too far across his face. He said, "You're late. We've been waiting for you since 1982. I screamed. I'm not ashamed to admit it. I screamed, and I threw myself out of the driver's seat and ran to the back door of the bus. I yanked the emergency release and jumped out. I ran into the woods. I ran until my lungs burned and my legs gave out. I didn't look back. I just ran. I don't know how long I ran. It felt like hours. Eventually, I found a road, a real road, with streetlights and houses. I flagged down a passing car and told them to call the police. The police came. They searched the area. They found the bus. It was parked on the side of a road, a perfectly normal road, not far from the highway. The GPS showed I was only about 5 miles from the depot. There was no asylum, no old county road, no nurse, no figures, just a bus parked normally, with the engine running and the interior lights on. But the dashboard clock was still blinking. 3:33. And when the police checked the maintenance logs, they found something strange. The bus had been serviced that morning, no issues. But the inspection sticker on the windshield was from 1982, the same year the asylum was closed. I went back to the depot the next day. I asked dispatch about the text I received. The dispatcher looked at me like I was crazy. He said, "We never sent you a text. We don't text drivers. We use the radio, and we never canceled the 77 route. It ran on schedule all night. You were supposed to be on it, but you never showed up." I showed him my phone. The message was gone. No record of it. No blocked number. Nothing. I quit that job the same week. I moved to a different city. I don't drive buses anymore. I drive a delivery van for a small company. Day shifts only. No nights, no empty roads. But sometimes, late at night, when I can't sleep, I think about that nurse. I think about the figures in the doorway. And I think about what she said. "You're early for your shift." Early, not late. Early. Like I was supposed to be there later, like I showed up before my time. I don't know what would have happened if I'd walked into that asylum. I don't know who was waiting for me, or what they wanted. I don't know if I was supposed to be one of them, or if I was supposed to drive them somewhere. I don't want to know. All I know is that somewhere out there, in a place that doesn't exist on any map, an abandoned asylum is still standing, and the nurse is still waiting, and the figures are still watching. I just hope I'm never early for that shift again, because next time I might not be able to run. I still have nightmares about 3:33. Every night I wake up at the exact same time. Not 3:32, not 3:34, 3:33, on the dot. Every single night, and every time I check my phone, and every time the clock is frozen, just for a second, just long enough for me to see it. The old county road, the abandoned asylum, the nurse in white, the figures in the doorway. I don't know what they are. I don't know what they want. But I know one thing. They're still there, and they're still waiting. And every night at 3:33, I feel like they're a little bit closer.